Hey there, I'll talk a little bit about some things we learned really fast on our first few RV trips. Now, when you go buy an RV, they go through an orientation. You spend 30, 40 minutes. You can watch some things on the internet, but the best thing to do first trip or two is to shake down trips, that type of things. Do it in your driveway like we did. We found out about the amount of air pollution that comes in. We like to sleep late, so we started to fix that. Next thing though is when you really go to your first trip and you go to an RV park, there's some things that you learn in a hurry. I remember we got hooked up and went inside to flush the commode and water sprayed out everywhere. Well, found out that water pressure's too high, so I had to go out and buy basically a regulator, and found out that in your travel trailer about 45 to 50 psi is all you need. So found out the hard way that the first trip is that if you don't water all over you when you flush your commodes, get one of these things. Next thing we found out, the sewer was a big thing. That was the biggest concern I had getting into RVing, is the dump tanks. Had an RV hose that came with the travel trailer, and it had sort of a twist lock end on each end, so I naturally assumed that one end, of course, fit into the trailer. The other end obviously had to have a twist lock at the sewer connection at the RV park. Well, that's not the case. It's a female threaded connector. So got back home and had to buy some adapters to fit the end of the hose so it would screw down into the sewer connector. Also found out because the sewer connector is 6-8 inches above the ground, there's a natural dip in the sewer hose, and there's some waste that collected in the dip, so when we left in a few days I had to pick the hose up and kind of drain it all out. You can buy now some sewer stands, little plastic clips that will elevate the hose and take the dip out of the hose. Saw one guy that used PVC pipe. He made him a very short section of pipe, and it kept the sewer hose at the proper angle where there wasn't any wastewater collecting. So things like that you learn really quickly. The electrical, 20 amp, 30 amp, 50 amp, had to buy some more connectors. I've got every kind you can think of now. This is a male to female, 15 amp to 50 amp. Got another one here, 30 amp to 50 amp. So I've got all kinds of connectors now where I can hook up to any electrical. Next thing we found out, especially on our shakedown trip, was that running everything in the trailer at once kicked the breaker out. So air conditioner, microwave, couldn't run both at the same time, but you can go in now and hook up to the 50 amp and everything can run. You won't be worried about kicking breakers out, that type of thing. So the electrical was a learning curve as well. Learned a lot about RV parks, a whole lot. One would think, if you're in the RV park business, that a level pad would be paramount. Everybody wants their RV, their travel trailer to be perfectly level. I found out early on that if it's a little bit unlevel, it causes a lot of issues, especially when you're trying to sleep in a bed that's maybe a little bit unlevel. I was surprised how many parks have pads that aren't quite level. They've got an incline to them, and that's well, I don't understand that. People want level pads. Don't understand why some places have pads with inclines, but that's the way it is. We started out with RV parks, or sort of unsavory looking. There's some folks that have, you can tell they're long term, and I mean more than a year. You can tell by the condition of the RVs that there's a lot of private parks that have a high percentage of folks that have been there a good while. Uh, we don't go to any RV park unless we have checked it out, that we have checked it on the internet, even driven there, because trips we're making are within about an hour or so of our home. So we're very careful as to what RV parks that we visit. If you have filled out a form to reserve a site, you know what I'm talking about here. They ask you a lot of questions about your equipment. How long is it? Slide outs, that type of thing. I found out rather quickly what they wanted to know is that they're cramming you in a very, very small area. So just get used to the fact that when you go on these trips, you got neighbors in front of you and back of you, to the sides of you, that are very close. They really condense the folks into these RV parks. So just again, something to get adjusted to. Now we'll start boondocking some later, and we will get into the more remote places, but for the time being, we're kind of being civilized about it. Uh, they all offer different services. Most all offer electric and water. A good portion didn't have sewer. Uh, and for newbies like us, having to pull up to the dump station in front of everybody and trying to figure things out was a little bit disconcerting, but we got through it okay. Uh, but the condition of the RV parks, the crowding, the way you're kind of crammed in there was a little bit new to us. But these are all things that we just learned over the last few trips. Issues with sewer, some of the electrical issues, the water pressure, the actual condition of the RV parks themselves. But the only way to learn is just to get out there and do it. First few trips were a little bit nervous, but hey, you get used to it, and you pull in, you hook up, and you enjoy yourself. And main thing is just get out there and do it. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and maybe you can learn some of these things before we did, having to learn them the hard way. Don't want to pull up to the RV park and not be able to connect to the sewer or the electric, that type of thing. So hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you later on the next trip. Have a good one.